Study of a Woman by Honore de Balzac. Category Literature. Short story dedication to the Marquis Jean Charles de Negro. Study of a Woman. The Marquise de l'Estomere is one of these young women who have been brought up in the spirit of the Restoration. She has principles, she fasts, takes the sacrament, and goes to balls and operas very eloquently dressed. Her confessor permits her to combine the mundane with sanctity, always in conformity with the church and the world. Has she taken present living image of present day, which seems to have taken the word legality for its motto. The conduct of the Marquise shows precisely enough religious devotion to attain under a new Maintenon to the gloomy piety of the last days of Louis XIV, and enough the worldliness to adopt the habits of gallantry of the first years of that reign. Should it ever be revived at the present moment, she is strictly virtuous from policy, possibly from inclination, married for the last 7 years to the Marquis de Listomere, one of those deputies who expect a peerage. She also may consider that such conduct will promote the ambitions of her family. Some women are reserving their opinion of her until the moment when Monsieur de Lostomere becomes a peer of France, when she herself will be 36 years of age, a period of life when most women discover that they are the dupes of social laws. The Marquis is a rather insignificant man. He stands well at court. His good qualities are as negative as his defects. The former can no more make him a reputation for virtue than the latter can give him the sort of glamour cast by vice. As deputy, he never speaks, but he votes right. He behaves in his own home as he does in the chamber. Consequently, he is held be one of the best friends, husbands in France, though not susceptible of lively interest. He never scolds unless to be sure he is kept waiting. His friends have named him dull weather, aptly enough, for there is neither clear light nor total darkness about him. He is like all the ministers who have succeeded one another in France since the Charter. A woman with principles could not have fallen into better hands. A man incapable of follies, great thing, virtuous, occasional. Some fops have been sufficiently impertinent to press the hand of the Marquis while dancing with her. They gained nothing in return but contemptuous glances. All were made to feel the shock of that insulting indifference which, like a spring frost, destroys the germs of flattering hopes. Beaux wits and fops, men whose sentiments are fed by sucking their canes, those of a great name or a great fame, those of the highest or lowest rank in her own world, they all blanch before her. She has conquered the right to converse as long as and often as she chooses with the men who seem to her agreeable, without being entered on the tablets of gossip. Certain coquettish women are capable of following a plan of this kind for 7 years in order to gratify their fancies later, but to suppose any such reservations in the Marquis de Listomere would be to calumniate her. I have had the happiness of knowing this phoenix. She talks well, I know how to listen, consequently I please her, and I go to her parties. That, in fact, was the object of my ambition. Neither plain nor pretty, Madame de Listomere has white teeth, a dazzling skin, and very red lips. She is tall and well made, her foot is smaller and slender, and she does not put it forth. Her eyes, for being dulled, like those of so many Parisian women, have a gentle glow which becomes quite magical if, by chance, she is animated. A soul is then divined behind that rather indefinite form. If she takes an interest in the conversation, she displays a grace which is otherwise buried beneath the precautions of cold demeanour, and then she is charming. Does she not seek success, but she obtains it? We find that for which we do not seek. That saying is so often true that some day it will be turned into a proverb. It is in fact the moral of this adventure which I should not allow myself to tell, if it were not echoing at the present moment through all the salons of Paris. The Marquis de Listomere danced about a month ago with a young man as modest as he is lively, full of good qualities, but exhibiting chiefly his defects. He is ardent, but he laughs at ardour. He has talent, and he hides it. He plays the learned man with aristocrats, and aristocrat with learned man. Eugene de Rastineg is one of those extremely clever young men who try all things and seem to sound others to discover what the future has in store. While awaiting the age of ambition, he scoffs at everything. He has grace and originality, two rare qualities because the one is apt to exclude the other. On this occasion he talked for nearly half an hour with Madame de Listomere, without any predetermined idea of pleasing her, as they followed the caprices of conversation, which, beginning with the opera of Galileo, has reached the topic of duties of women. He looked at the Marquis more than once in a manner that embarrassed her. When he left her and did not speak to her again for the rest of the evening, he danced, played an écarté, lost some money, and went home to bed. I have honour to assure you that the affair happened precisely thus. I had nothing, and I suppressed nothing. The next morning Rastinag woke late and stayed in bed, giving himself up to one of those matutinal reveries in the course of which a young man glides like a sylph under many a silken, or cashmere, or cotton drapery. The heavier the body from its weight of sleep, the more active the mind. Rastinag finally got up, without yawning overmuch, as many ill-bred persons are apt to do. He rang for his valet, ordered tea, and drank immoderately of it when it came, which will not seem extraordinary to persons who like tea, but to explain the circumstance to others who regard that beverage as a panacea for indigestion. I will add that Eugene was by this time writing letters. He was comfortably seated, his feet more frequently on the artisan's rug, properly on the rug, to have one's feet on the polished bar which connects the two griffins of a fender, and to think of our love in our dressing gown is so delightful, a thing that I deeply regret, the fact of having neither mistress nor fender nor dressing gown. The first letter which Eugene wrote was soon finished. He folded and sealed it and laid it before him without adding the address. The second letter began at 11 o'clock, was not finished till midday. The 4 pages were closely filled. "That woman keeps running in my head," he muttered as he folded this second epistle and laid it before him, intending to direct it as soon as he had ended his involuntary reverie. He crossed the 2 flaps of his flowered dressing gown, put his feet on a stool, slipped his hands into the pockets of his red cashmere trousers, and lay back in a delightful easy-chair with side wings, the seat and the back of which described an angle of 120 degrees. He stopped drinking tea and remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the gilded hand which formed the knob of his shovel, but without seeing either hand or shovel he ceased even to poke the fire. A vast mistake. Isn't it one of our greatest pleasures to play with the fire when we think of women? Our minds find speeches in those tiny blue flames which suddenly dart up and babble on the hearth. We interpret as we please the strong, harsh tones of a Burgundian. Here I must pause to put before all ignorant persons an explanation of that word, derived from a very distinguished etymologist who wishes his name kept secret. Burgundian is the name given since the reign of Charles VI to those noisy detonations, the result of which is to fling upon the carpet or the clothes a little coal or ember, the trifling nucleus of a conflagration. Heat or fire releases, they say, a bubble of air left in the heart of the wood by a gnawing worm. Indiem amor indie Burgundas. We tremble when we see the structure we had so carefully erected between the logs rolling down like an avalanche. Oh, to build and stir and play with fire when we love is the material development of our thoughts. It was at this moment that I entered the room. Rastinavig gave a jump and said, "Ah, there you are, dear. Hollis, how long you been here? Just come." "Ah!" He took up the 2 letters, directed them, and rang for his servant. "Take these," he said, "and deliver them." Joseph departed without a word. Admirable servant. We began to talk of the expedition to Moria, to which I was anxious to be appointed as physician. Eugene remarked that I should lose a great deal of time if I left Paris. We then conversed on various matters, and I think you will be glad if I suppress the conversation. When the Marquis de Listomere rose about 2:30 in the afternoon of that day, her waiting maid Caroline gave her a letter which she read while Caroline was doing her hair, an imprudence which many young women are thoughtless enough to commit. "Dear angel of love," said the letter, treasure of my life and happiness. At these words, the Marquis was about to fling the letter in the fire, but there came into her head a fancy which all virtuous women will readily understand, to see how a man who began a letter in that style could possibly end it. When she had turned the fourth page and read it, she let her arms drop like a person much fatigued. Caroline, go and ask who left this letter. Madame, I received it myself from valet de Monsieur le Baron de Rastignac. After that, there was silence for some time. Does Madame intend to dress? Asked Caroline. At least. No, he is certainly a most impertinent man. Reflected the Marquis, I request all women to imagine for themselves the reflections of which this was the first. Madame de Listomere ended hers by a formal decision to forbid her porter to admit Monsieur de Rastignac, and to show him herself something more than disdain when she met him in society, for his insolence far past that of other men, which the Marquise had ended by overlooking. At first she thought of keeping the letter, but on second thoughts she burned it.